Welcome to Lecture 9, the final lecture of UX203. We have covered 8 foundational topics: what UI and UX are, how to research users, how to structure information, how to wireframe and prototype, how to establish visual hierarchy, how to apply typography and color, how to design interactions and microinteractions, and how to build accessible, usable products. This lecture is about integration, how these disciplines connect, reinforce each other, and form a coherent practice. We will look at a real audit framework, a real case study, and the systemic thinking required to sustain UX quality over the lifetime of a product. We are in Lecture 9, the Capstone. All 8 preceding lectures have built towards this moment. The goal today is to synthesize, to see the whole practice as a system, to understand how UX work compounds over time, and to develop the professional habits that sustain design quality under real-world pressures. UX investment is not a cultural preference. It has a documented, measurable return on investment that exceeds most categories of product investment. Every dollar invested in UX returns $100 in value. This figure, from IBM's Design ROI research, reflects the avoided cost of usability failures discovered late, the reduced support ticket volume, and the improved conversion and retention that better designed products achieve. Products that have been through structured UX processes generate 33% fewer support tickets than products built without UX investment. Support tickets are a direct measure of usability failure. Every ticket represents a user who could not complete a task without help. Teams with mature UX practices deliver twice as fast as teams without them. This is the statistic that surprises engineering leads most. UX appears to add time, research, testing, iteration. It actually removes time by preventing the rework that unvalidated designs require after launch. Over the 8 previous lectures, we covered 9 questions that define whether a product is designed with UX rigor. Each question maps to one lecture and represents one dimension of audit. Do you have evidence of real user needs, personas, research findings, jobs to be done informing design decisions? If design decisions are made from assumptions rather than evidence, the risk of building the wrong thing is unbounded. Can users find what they need without searching? Does the navigation reflect how users think about the content, not how the organization thinks about itself? Was the core flow tested as a prototype before it was built? If the first time real users interacted with the product was after it was shipped, you did not de-risk the design. Does the layout communicate what matters and what to do next, within 5 seconds without instruction? Is there a documented type scale and a semantic color system? Are all contrast ratios verified as passing WAG-AA? Does every interactive element have explicit designs for all states: hover, focus, active, loading, error, success, empty? Has the product been audited against WVG 2.1 AA? Have the 5 most common failures: contrast, alt text, empty links, missing labels, missing language been explicitly checked? Has a heuristic evaluation been completed? Have 5 users been tested with Think Aloud protocol on the primary task flow? Does the team have a shared definition of UX? Is UX represented in product planning and sprint reviews, or only at the design stage? The Airbnb redesign case demonstrates what happens when the 9 audit dimensions are applied systematically to a real product problem. Airbnb's 2021 redesign was driven by a single insight from user research. The booking flow had 13 steps. But user research showed that the most important decision users were making was not price, it was trust. The redesign hypothesis: restructure the visual hierarchy of the listing page to surface trust signals, host response rate, cleanliness scores, verified photos, above the fold before price. The result: a 13% increase in booking conversion, without changing price, product, or marketing. The improvement came entirely from visual hierarchy changes that reflected what users actually needed to see to feel confident booking. The product did not change. The presentation of the product changed, and the business outcome changed with it. When applying a UX audit framework to an existing product, the process follows a structured sequence. Run the 9-question audit. Score each dimension. 0 equals no evidence of practice, 1 equals some practice, 2 equals structured practice. The audit is not a judgment, it is a diagnostic. The goal is to identify the dimensions with the highest gap between current practice and the standard. Not all gaps are equal. A missing type scale is a lower priority than a checkout flow with no error handling. Prioritize by user impact. Which gaps are causing users to fail, to abandon, or to distrust the product? For each high-priority gap, prototype the solution before rebuilding. A navigation restructure should be tested as a card sort before implementation. A hierarchy change should be validated with a 5-second test. Do not rebuild until you have evidence that the rebuild direction is correct. After implementation, test again. Measure the change in user outcomes, task completion, support ticket volume, conversion rate, accessibility audit score. Treat UX improvement as a continuous measurement discipline, not a project with a definitive end. The most common patterns of UX failure across the teams that have gone through the audit process. Skipping user research because we know our users, or we are the users. The result is a product that solves the problem the team has, not the problem the user has. The cost of this mistake is not always visible. Products that almost work are harder to diagnose than products that fail dramatically. Making individual design decisions without a design system, type scale, color tokens, component library, results in permanent visual drift. Every new screen introduces new inconsistencies. The product looks assembled rather than designed. Shipping the first design that seems reasonable without testing it with users. The first design is almost never the right design. The difference between teams that iterate and teams that do not is not talent, it is process. Adding accessibility features after launch, under compliance pressure, to a codebase that was not built with semantic HTML or keyboard navigation in mind. Retrofitting accessibility is 5 to 10 times more expensive than building it in from the beginning. Treating UX as a step in the development process, something that happens before engineering starts, rather than as an ongoing practice that runs in parallel with development and continues after launch. Products degrade over time when UX is not continuously maintained. Stripe's developer documentation is widely cited as the best technical documentation on the web, not because the content is exceptional, but because the UX of the documentation itself is exceptional. The hierarchy communicates structure instantly. The code examples are interactive. The search is fast and specific. The language is precise without being inaccessible. Every lecture principle we have covered is applied. Research-driven organization, clean IA, visual hierarchy, semantic typography, keyboard navigable interactions, and full accessibility compliance. The result of this investment. Developers who encounter Stripe's documentation consistently report that it reduces their integration time significantly compared to competing payment providers. The documentation UX is a competitive moat. For Stripe, UX quality is not a product feature, it is a revenue driver. Where does your organization sit on the UX maturity scale? And what does the path forward look like? UX absent. No explicit UX practice. Design decisions are made by product managers or engineers. User needs are inferred, not researched. Accessibility is not considered. Most products at this level have significant usability and trust problems that are attributed to other causes. UX reactive. UX is addressed in response to complaints or crises. After user research findings show a problem, after an accessibility lawsuit threat. There may be a designer on the team, but they are brought in late and their work is constrained by decisions already made. UX structured. Defined UX processes exist. A design system, a user research practice, a prototype testing workflow. UX is a distinct team function with a seat at the product planning table. Most mid-sized technology companies sit at this level. UX integrated. UX is embedded in every product function. Engineers contribute to design. Product managers can run research sessions. The design system is owned by the whole team, not a single designer. Accessibility is part of the definition of done. UX user-driven. The organization's strategy is informed by continuous user research. Product decisions are evidence-driven by default. UX metrics, task completion, usability scores, accessibility compliance, are reported at the executive level alongside business metrics. We never think of design as finished. This principle, applied at every level of Stripe's product organization, is the operationalization of the UX user-driven maturity level. Stripe ships product continuously, measures user outcomes continuously, and redesigns based on measurement. There is no version 2.0 redesign. because the product is always being improved incrementally. The alternative, the big redesign that accumulates UX debt for 2 years and then attempts to clear it in a single release, is one of the highest risk activities in product development. The UX practice is not a linear process. It is a cycle that runs continuously throughout the life of a product. Research and discovery. Understand the user, the problem space, and the context. User interviews, ethnographic research, analytics review, competitive analysis, synthesis and definition. Convert research findings into design constraints. Personas, jobs to be done, user story maps, information architecture, wireframing, prototyping, and visual design. Translate definition into testable artifacts. Lo-fi to hi-fi, component design, interaction states. Validation. Test prototypes and shipped features with real users. Usability testing, heuristic evaluation, accessibility audit. Launch and monitor. Ship the validated design, measure outcomes against the defined success metrics, and feed measurement results back into the next discovery cycle. Before. A product built without UX process. The navigation reflects the engineering architecture, not the user's mental model. The type scale is inconsistent. The primary call to action competes visually with promotional content. Error messages are generic. There is no empty state. The mobile layout is a scaled-down version of the desktop, not a mobile-first design. Accessibility was never audited. The same product after a structured UX audit and redesign. Navigation reorganized by user task. Type scale established and documented. Visual hierarchy clarified. One dominant CTA per screen. Specific actionable error messages. Empty states with clear CTAs. Mobile-first layout. WAG-AA compliance verified. Support ticket volume down 30%. Conversion up 20%. These are not invented numbers. They are typical outcomes from structured UX intervention on a product that started at UX absent or reactive maturity. UX debt is the accumulated cost of design decisions made without UX process, and it compounds exactly like technical debt. Every time a feature is shipped without user research, every time a prototype is skipped, every time an accessibility requirement is deferred, every time a component is added outside the design system, UX debt accumulates. Each individual compromise seems small. The aggregate is a product that users trust less, support more, and abandon sooner. UX debt compounds because inconsistency breeds inconsistency. When a new designer joins a team and sees 15 different button styles, they have no clear signal about which one to use, so they add a 16th. When an engineer implements a new form without a reference for error message format, they write a new generic error message, adding to the 40 they cannot find in the codebase. The debt does not stay constant, it grows. Address UX debt systematically. Audit the product, quantify the debt across each of the 9 dimensions, prioritize by user impact, and allocate a percentage of every sprint to debt reduction, just as engineering teams allocate a percentage to technical debt. 5 to 10% of velocity dedicated to UX debt reduction prevents accumulation from reaching crisis levels. Is there documented evidence of real user needs informing the design decisions in this release? Can anyone on the team name the specific user problem this feature solves? Has the information architecture been tested, card sorting, tree testing, prototype navigation with representative users? Or is the structure based on internal assumptions? Was the core flow tested as a prototype with at least 3 to 5 users? Were blocking usability issues identified and fixed before build? Has the feature been audited against WCAG 2.1 AA? Have contrast, alt text, keyboard navigation, focus management, and semantic HTML been verified? After this release, does the team's UX practice score higher than it did before? Are we building process capability, not just shipping features? The 9-question audit maps 1 question to each lecture in this course. Together, they form a complete picture of UX practice quality. Run the audit before planning a redesign. It tells you where to invest first and where the highest impact improvements are. UX debt compounds like technical debt. Every design decision made without process is a withdrawal from a trust account with the user. Systematic, incremental UX improvement, 5 to 10% of every sprint, prevents the accumulation that makes large-scale redesigns necessary. Good UX is never finished. Products, users, and context change continuously. The teams that maintain UX quality over time are not the ones with the most talented designers, they are the ones with the most consistent UX process. Process outlasts talent because it is transferable, scalable, and independent of any individual. 3 questions to close the course. Looking at the 9-question audit. Which dimension would score lowest in a product you have worked on or use regularly? And what is the single highest impact intervention you would make? UX debt. Where is it accumulating most quickly in your current context? And what would it take to allocate 5% of sprint velocity to systematic reduction? And finally, what is one principle from this course that you will apply in the next thing you ship? Something specific enough that you could tell us in 3 months whether you did it? That is UX203. Research your users. Structure your information. Test before you build. Establish visual hierarchy. Apply typography and color as systems. Design every interaction state. Audit for accessibility. And then never stop. Thank you.